Hello, welcome to Kindness in Business, the podcast where we explore the power of compassion and empathy in the business world. My name is Sonia Gonzalez Guillonneau, and I'll be your host. Today's special guest is Torron Iveson. Torron is an account executive at YULife with 5 years of sales experience, helping HR leaders boost employee well-being through tech, behavioral science, and gamification. He's also a sales development coach, having supported over 100 SDRs across 25 plus SaaS companies. Torron brings sharp insights into building high-performing teams and aligning sales strategies for growth. Outside of work, he's a footballer, golfer, and all-around sports fan. Welcome, Torron. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
For those of you that don't know, Torron and I used to work together, actually. He trained me as a coach when we were at SaaS Leads and SDR Academy. So we work together and know each other personally. So very excited for this podcast episode. And the first question for you, Torron, is who are you beyond work? What's your journey look like so far?
Who have I been in work, did you say?
No, who are you beyond work?
Who am I beyond work? Oh, wow. What a great question. Who am I beyond work? My answer to that is going to be I'm like a sibling, a brother, an older brother to two younger siblings who I try to be a good role model to. I'm a friend. I find myself, I try to be that friend in the friendship group who's always like there for other people and is very helpful. I think that's kind of like why I naturally drifted into coaching. It's just in my character to try and help. Probably sometimes like people actually don't want help. They maybe just want to be listened to, but I tend to butt in with advice. A son, boyfriend. Yeah, I think that is probably how I would identify myself beyond work. But it's a difficult question to answer that because work is such a big part of all of our lives that you do kind of, if someone said to me, oh, what do you do or who are you? I'd be like, oh, I'm a sales coach or a salesperson. That would probably be my default answer. Yeah, great opening question.
You're welcome. It's one of those questions that we don't often ask ourselves. And it is an important one, right? Because our roles may evolve through life, but who we are beyond that is important. And it also drives our values, our principles, who we are as people, right? I think we also need to align to that. What are we passionate about? What are our hobbies, right? Because all of those things also create who we are as a person. We're not just our job, even though our job does take a lot of our life.
Yeah. I think people's jobs reflect a lot about who they are actually as a person outside of work too. So like the coaching side, like I'm definitely try to support people and be a good friend, family member. But then the sales part, like I'm so unbelievably competitive and have always had to have sports or some like element of competition in my life too. So yeah, no, great question.
I think you're also a very ambitious person, right? You're someone that has an idea of where they want to get to and they'll set goals to get there. And, you won't necessarily put other people under the bus to get to those goals. You're just focused on yourself and how you can get there. And that also says a lot about your person, but also ties in with your roles, because if you don't have any sort of hunger, ambition, drive within sales, it's very difficult to make it, right?
Yeah. 100%. Also, I think like I've always tried to take people with me too. Like if I've been doing well, or maybe I've been promoted or moved to a new business, and there's been opportunity for like my network, I try to bring people with me. So yeah, good point.
Nice. So first question for you in the kindness in business kind of area section is, what does kindness in business mean to you personally and professionally?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question a lot, knowing the theme of the podcast, and I don't think many people, like if they were to describe me, I don't think kind would be the word that immediately springs to mind. And there was a time when I'd like recently been promoted to SDR manager and I was struggling a bit. I was out of my depth. Performance wasn't great. I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I'd sort of been left to figure it out to a certain extent because I was in that startup environment where, people just didn't have time to really help. And at the time I had a manager who is like an incredibly kind human and almost maybe too kind for what I needed at the time, and was sort of like very softly trying to nudge me in the right direction. And I think actually what I needed at that time was like real brutal honesty. And I had a conversation with another one of the founders where we'd gone out for some dinner, and they just very simply said like, Torron, you need to step it up. There's no other way to put this. Like, you have to step it up. You've got to figure it out. There's no one coming to help you. Stop looking for help. Stop looking for support. Like, it's not there. You've got to figure it out. You've got to step up. And I think for a lot of people, that might have been too far across the line. Like, it was delivered very harsh. But in that moment, that was the kindness I needed. And like from that point on, something just clicked. Things just changed. Everything that I did, like I gave everything to. So I think for me, kindness in business is about like real honesty. And I think most people will probably recognize the scenario where they've been speaking to a manager and they might be getting feedback or they might have asked for feedback. And like, although you will get constructive criticism, I always find there's like a guise of like, they're never really telling you the blunt, honest truth about what they think. So for me, like what I look for, particularly in leaders and colleagues, and the ones who I would describe as kind, are the ones that will tell me the brutal truth, whether they think I'm going to like it or not. And maybe it doesn't feel kind in that moment, but the intention is like almost as pure as possible. And I think that's how I try to be as well. So yeah, that's what it means to me.
I think what's interesting about kindness in business is that it can be such a broad topic and it can mean such different things for different people. And all of those answers are valid, right? And this is why doing this podcast is so interesting to me, because there are so many different elements of kindness. And in this scenario for you, having almost that tough love was what enabled you to push and to get to that next level and next stage. And the intention was probably just to make you better. Right. And that in itself is a kind move. And depending on the type of leader that the person is, depending on how they provide feedback, they might be more sugarcoaty around it, or they might just tell you how it is from their brain. Right. But again, different people react to feedback in different ways. And so in order to push us to continue evolving and growing and learning new things, sometimes we do need to hear the things that aren't going well, that we need to improve on, or that we need to do better on, because otherwise we're relying on our own self-awareness, which might not be there if we don't have that experience sometimes, right?
100%. Yeah. You just like, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, do you? Like you do just need to be told. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things as well that I've learned from that experience is, I ended up speaking to the leader who was perhaps giving me the feedback in like too soft of a manner. And we figured out that actually that's how I needed to be almost managed. It was like very direct, very to the point. If there's a problem, nip it in the bud. And that was a great learning for both of us. But what they taught me as well is that like, exactly like you said there, most people, not everybody will respond well to that kind of feedback method. Some people do need it more gentle or more constructive, or however you would phrase it. And one of the things that I've definitely taken forward into my career, particularly with coaching, and sometimes it can be as direct as asking the question, like, how do you like to receive feedback? And there's no wrong answer. Everybody kind of defaults to like, oh, be really direct and be really blunt. But often I think you need to almost re-challenge that, because sometimes people they say they want it direct, but when you really give it to them, they're maybe not so sure. And my coach now asks a brilliant question sometimes when we're going over a call, and they'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how direct do you want me to be today? And some days I will say 10. Most days I will say 10. But even for me, there might be days where I say, let's probably go 7 today. So yeah, it's like an ever evolving, moving thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're dealing with humans, which when you're coaching or when you're being coached, you usually are, your emotions fluctuate and you're not going to be feeling the same way with today and yesterday and the day after, and different elements can impact that, right? So I think it's an important question to ask before you give that feedback, because that also impacts the ability to receive and respond to that feedback for the other person.
Yeah.
But I
For
don't know.
sure.
I don't know if you remember, we did a session back when we were working together about ways of working, right? And even within our team, we were all doing the same role, but all had different ways of receiving, interpreting information, providing feedback, taking it on. And that session was actually a super useful one for me, and one that I've utilized in a lot of different contexts since then, and even in my coaching sessions, because it's true that my way of working is different from yours. Doesn't mean that ours is wrong, and we can learn from each other's ways of working as well. In fact, I learned a lot from you. And funny thing is, you mentioned at the beginning that people don't necessarily associate you with the word kind as such. And, I beg to differ. I think that you are definitely a more direct person, someone that doesn't sugarcoat things and just tell it how it is and how you're feeling in that moment. But you are someone that looks out for your team, that looks out for the people that you're coaching, that looks out for wanting to improve things. You are respectful as well of the people around you. You're collaborative and communicative, right? Even though you may prefer to do things alone, having that second perspective of feedback is still useful to you and allows you to change your perspective. And I'll never forget this. And I even did a post on LinkedIn about it. But you remember that first session I had to teach on my own without like any other coaches. And halfway through the session, I had a slide in front of me that I didn't understand. And so instead of explaining it wrong to the students, I said to the students, I need to bring someone in to explain it better so that I can learn from it and you all can learn from it. And I called Torron. Torron was available. He jumped on. And that was a huge moment for me because A, I was able to be honest and vulnerable and transparent with the students rather than giving them some misinformation. B, I learned, they learned, and, Torron stepped up. And for me, that was a huge kindness moment.
Yeah, I remember that story as well. I don't know if I saw that LinkedIn post. I would have commented on it. Yeah, I would say like that moment probably when I reflect back is like probably sums up our working relationship quite nicely, because I think especially that early on, I think it would be fair to say you and I have quite different communication styles, and it took there was like almost a bedding in period where we had to like figure out how to work together. And I think one of the things I loved so much about that moment was like the humility to say, I care more about getting this right than, like you say, being vulnerable. And like for me, you might not have felt this way, but I think I would have felt quite embarrassed to have done that, even though it was the right thing to do. And I think like in that moment, my respect for you just like went through the roof. And I think it sets such a great example to the students. And it also like, in terms of reputation of the business we was working for, it's like that these guys are adamant on trying to get this right, as opposed to just trying to not look a fool. Yeah, that's a cool moment actually. I tell that story quite a lot, to be fair.
I'm glad you do. I do as well. Yeah, it definitely changed the course of our working relationship from then on. And I think, we understood that we could lean on each other. It was the first time I felt like you had my back. And to me in a
Yeah.
team, that was so important. And we had a third coach that was almost like in the middle of us two, in the middle of our working styles as well, which was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Shout out to Life if you're watching. But yeah, no, I think we all learned a lot. And that's part of being a startup as well, right? We all had to figure out things that just at the time we didn't have documentation for. We had to change a lot of things on the go and kind of continue evolving in order to be better, do better, and deliver better results, right? And we were all wearing many hats. But honestly, I think it was such a milestone, like part of the journey for so many of us and what we went on to do after. And for both of us, I don't think we would be coaches today if that part of our life hadn't happened, right?
No way. Yeah, absolutely not. I always say to people who, like a lot of SDRs, even AEs will come to coaching and say, I'm like the founding SDR, founding AE. It's a really early like startup risk for anybody to take. But the story I always tell them is like, without us having taken that risk, like none of us would have the experience or be in the position we are today, because like you were just forced to learn so much. And talk about like the kindness in business thing. If we didn't work together as a team and all pull in the right direction, it just would have fallen apart. Like we had to rely on each other a bit. So like, yeah, that just like such raw exposure to the reality of the business world. Like when things were tight, everybody's jobs were right at risk, right? Yeah. Amazing memories, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just builds more to who we are, to our strengths and to our journeys, right? So I think it's really amazing to see what's come out of it. And at the time, it was a really fulfilling and amazing job. We had a clear mission. We were making a
Yeah.
difference in people's lives. We were also a young company, so that in itself was really fun. We made a difference to sending packages to Ukraine and did a lot of really cool stuff that I will never forget.
Yeah. Great memories.
So coming back onto the kindness in business side, how do you train and encourage your team to lead with empathy in their sales or customer interactions?
Yeah. Good question. I think it's going back to honesty, like the goal behind every discovery call I run, and that I also will teach to anybody who comes in for coaching, and also with like the team and we work together internally, is like to get to the truth. Get to the truth and tell the truth. Sales has a reputation for being dishonest, doesn't it? Almost all prospects are very skeptical of salespeople, and probably rightly so from their own personal experience. So one thing that we're massively big on is like get to the truth with your questioning. Like if you feel like someone's not giving you the right answer, question it, double down in an empathetic and soft way, and be understanding as to why they might want to share. They might not want to share all of the details with you, but get to the truth and tell the truth. And if you think that means we can't help this person, then tell them that. And if you think, like, sometimes people will come to us and they'll say, I've got this offer from this provider, I might turn around and say, that is an unbelievable offer. for what you're looking to achieve. And I actually don't think we could do better in this instance. So I think you should probably take that. And some people will say, wow, that's like, thanks so much for the advice, and go and do it. And other people might turn around and say, actually, no, the reason why I'm still talking to you is because I want this, this, and this. And then the conversation continues. But yeah, get to the truth and tell the truth. I think are kind of like the two overarching principles. And if you do that, like the rest of the dominoes almost begin to fall, like other stuff just starts to fall into place. Objection handling becomes a lot easier. Pricing discussions become a lot easier because you've set the tone in the relationship that like, we're going to be directly honest with each other.
Yeah, I think honesty is extremely important, just as much as setting the right expectations, right? Because if you're honest, if you're transparent with the person that you're speaking to, you're going to gain more trust and credibility. And if it is the right time and the right product and the right fit, they will probably move forward. But if it's not, they might come back in the future, or you might see them again at a different role in a different kind of business, etc. So everyone that you're talking to is a human, and they will remember how you made them feel as well. And so the thing is, lying is so silly to me because it doesn't help you or them make a good decision. And at the end of the day, that's going to hurt your numbers, and is going to hurt the company's reputation and everything that you're doing, right? And not just that, if they do go ahead and become a customer, you want them to retain the loyalty. And so if you sell them something that's not possible or that's not available, that's only going to make them at risk, right? So there's a lot of elements that come into play when it comes to just being transparent. And at the end of the day, it makes you feel better about what you're doing too, because you don't have to lie to anybody. You don't have any guilt. You're just saying it how it is.
Yeah. There's a story that I love. Rory Sutherland tells this. If you don't know who he is, go and check him out. I think he's absolutely brilliant. I think I've got this right, but I might have the details slightly wrong. So years ago in America, when like being a car salesman was a really big thing, at General Motors, every year for years on years on years, the same person was the number one salesperson, like across the country, nationwide. And they went in and observed what he was doing, and they couldn't really quite tell what the difference was between every other salesperson that was doing well and this one particular salesperson. Conversations seemed to kind of go the same. There wasn't nothing that glared out. And they said to him, like, what are you doing differently? And he said, and I think every salesperson can learn from this. He said, the question that everybody asks themselves, on a fundamental level when they enter a sales interaction is, how do I get this person to buy as quickly as possible? And like, the connotations of that is like, how do I convince? How do I drive urgency? And all of these things we hear all of the time. He said, I do the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but I do something different. I ask myself the question, how do I make sure that the next time these people decide to buy a car, they're definitely going to buy the car from me? And that framing makes you just like, you have to approach it differently, because how do I make sure that next time they do buy whatever it is that you sell, how do I make sure they buy from me? Well, they need to think I'm credible. They need to think I'm trustworthy. They need to feel like they're getting told the truth. They need to feel like they're not being forced, that they're being guided. That shapes like so much of my decision making, like in the moment on calls. Most salespeople will have been in circumstances where they could have told a little white lie, or they could have maybe left something out, or they could have maybe not quite answered the question completely honestly, and it probably would have maybe got a different result. But I think in those moments you harm yourself. And interestingly enough as well, with that mindset, sometimes like there is a bit of a lag. Like if you start doing that, it might take you a little while for those almost those seeds that you've planted to then like to grow, and like the circle comes back, if that makes sense. So you might push someone away for 12 months for them to eventually come back. So like in the short term, it can be quite painful to do that. Once you get like a couple of years into a role, then those people that do come back, the conversations are great and they remember you for that too. So yeah, that's a framing that I try to adopt too. Like, how do I make sure the next time they decide to buy, for us, it's employee benefit, so they buy from me?
Yeah, I like that. And I think it goes very much hand in hand with that notion of seek to understand and seek to help rather than seek to sell, right? If you're just after the meeting, if you're just after the sell, you're looking after your own benefit. You're not necessarily going to be providing the best product. And people are going to notice that right away. So they might go to someone else that makes them feel a little bit more heard and valued. And the thing is, especially with outbound sales, 80% of the time it's not the right time. And so when the right time is there, you want them to come to you and not next door to your competitor.
Yeah. 100%. I just think prospects as well, like they can just, I'm not sure if we're allowed to swear on this podcast, but I think prospects can just tell when you're not being completely honest. Like they can just sense it. Like it just comes across, doesn't it? And I think unless you're selling a really, really like need to have product, And I think most products out there are probably not need to have. It's very difficult to be good if you're a bit slimy.
Yeah, and we are in a world where you need to stand out, and the best as the R's, the best the Y's will find a way to be authentic and stand out while also using AI and different tools that are available to them. And that's something we'll discuss in the second part of the podcast. But yeah, I think it is interlinked, right?
Yeah, 100%. Agree.
So before we go into the sales dev and AI portion of the podcast, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to someone trying to lead their business with more heart and humanity?
Well, I feel like I've given my favorite piece of advice. Let me think of something else. Someone trying to lead their business.
Yeah, so think of a founder, think of someone that's actually in charge of people.
Yeah, good framing. I think like you're stronger together. They say like the saying is you can go faster alone but further together. And I think you need people to rally around you if you're trying to drive a business forward. Like you need people to either believe in the mission or believe in you, like want to almost, it's like a bit dramatic to say, but to go to war with you kind of thing. So like, what can you do to pay into your team's emotional bank account? Because there will be a time when you're going to need to withdraw and you're going to have to say, can you work late? Can you help me on this project? It's going to be tough. We might have to do something over the weekend. Like, I know both you and I have been in that scenario. But if along the way you've paid into that emotional bank account, people won't feel bad about doing it, or there won't be like a sour taste, or they won't feel forced. They will want to help. So what can you do just on the micro level? Like when it's a sunny Friday afternoon, does everybody need to still be at the desk? Maybe it goes without saying that they can take the afternoon off. But what if you just sent a message out and saying, clock off at 1 o'clock today? Like, great job this week. Or I don't know, there's lots of little things that people can do just to make people feel appreciated. And then when it comes to those moments where you do need to make a withdrawal, you need enough money in there to do it. You need to have paid into that emotional bank account. So I think I think a lot of businesses miss that. A lot of people you talk to don't have that feeling towards the business that they work for. They feel, I think, almost a bit used at times. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
I think you've raised a very good point. And, you know, there are a lot of different ways that leaders can do that and that they can lead initiatives to like top up the emotional bank of their employees. I think, you know, they can do it individually, they can do it in groups, they can do it as a company. There are a lot of different ways to do it. But it's also just about caring a little bit more for the people, right? At the end of the day, if you are taking the time to maybe get to know your employees or get to know your teams or allow for some time where people feel heard and valued and like they're making an impact. At the end of the day, people don't really care as much about a small difference in salary, but they do care about a culture. They do care about how do they feel when they come into work every day? How do they feel on Sunday when they start to think about the week ahead? How do they get on with their colleagues or not? Do they feel like their work is at risk every day? You know, all of these things create that psychological safety or not. And that, I think, drives performance a lot, because one of the things I've noticed is that happier people in general perform better, right? So the happier your employees are, the more they're going to put in, the more they're going to care about the work they're putting in, and the more they're going to invest in the company. So it goes both ways. You need to invest in your employees just as much as they invest in you and your company.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So that's a nice way to end the kindness in business portion. And we're going to go on to the sales development and AI. And the first question for you is, how has the role of sales development evolved in the last few years? And what changes do you see coming?
Yeah. The AI part of this conversation, I'm a bit worried for. We've spoke about this already, haven't we? But how has it changed? I mean, when I first was an SDR, like we was in the age of where it was like hyper personalization at all costs. And like we would go into people's Twitter pages and putting the name into Google and finding out that they had a Labrador or a Bengal kitten or whatever it was, and trying to like weave that into all of our emails and everything. And there's a couple of like good examples you might remember of like emails that I wrote back in the day that was like ridiculously personalized around like musicians and all sorts of different things and puns. And it worked really well because it was novel. And I think novelty is actually one of like the biggest almost predictors of a successful SDR. Like if you can stand out, if you can zig when everybody else sags, and almost by the time something hits LinkedIn, I think it starts already losing its power.
Oh, yeah.
So a great example of this is this is a cold call. Would you like to hang up?
Oh, you
I was using that. Love it. Yeah, I've always loved it. I was using that 5 years ago before it was cool. I saw it on, I think both Josh Braun and Benjamin Dennehy were talking about it a long, long time ago. And I still occasionally use it now, but I've actually recently kind of abandoned it because I can tell you for a fact it doesn't work as well as it used to. And I think it's just because everybody's doing it because it's become popular. So I think we've gone from like hyper personalization to like relevance, and also like I talk a lot about like reciprocating effort. So like, does your prospect perceive effort that you've put into your prospecting efforts? So one of the things that I do at the moment that's really successful is like gifting campaigns, physical gifts that get delivered to their office. The parcel is wrapped by me. The address is handwritten. There's a handwritten note. It's relevant to what we sell. And people will reach out to me. I've had prospects call me because I leave my number on the bottom of the note to say, I loved that approach. Happy to find time for a coffee or a chat or what have you. And that like never ever happens, does it, when you send an email? No one ever calls you and goes, amazing email, by the way. Maybe if you sell to sales leaders. So I think it's gone from like hyper personalization, people have cottoned on to that can be done at scale, to like, you have to do something to stand out from the crowd. Like you have to make them perceive effort, and you've got to try and do something novel. I always say to SDRs, if it's hit LinkedIn, it's like, it's on its last legs. It's like point of diminishing returns. So yeah, I think despite the move towards AI, more automation with all like sales engagement platforms that were all the rage a few years ago, I actually think we're going to a place of like more human connection is needed because it lacks so much. I always go and meet I try to anyway, go and meet all of my deals in person if I can. Almost all of them tell me that no other salesperson does that.
Wow.
Simple things like that, I just think they help so much because now they're going to pick up the phone when I call them. They'll reply to a WhatsApp or a text or what have you. So bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. And what's funny to me hearing you speak is that actually some of the things that you're doing today and not necessarily novelty, because when I started 10 years ago, 11 years ago, they were big. Like we would always go to in-phase presentations. At the time, it was
Yeah.
the PowerPoint, so that's a whole other story, but we would get to meet them face to face. We would send out gifts. In fact, the marketing team would do gifts every year for the top clients, for the top prospects. You know, there was a lot of partner events or like customer events where we would show and kind of demonstrate to the customers like, hey, we do care about you, not just because you bring in money, but because you are an important part of what we're doing. Your feedback matters. We want to put you in front of other potential opportunities for you, you know, all of these things. And I think a lot of, and the same with WhatsApp, like at the time, it was quite normal to send a WhatsApp to someone you just met at an event because LinkedIn wasn't as hugely utilized in that sense. And the messaging capabilities were not what they are today. So you could send a meeting invite, but you would always get the business card with someone's phone number. Everyone had a BlackBerry or a work phone that had a dedicated WhatsApp just for that. So it wasn't intrusive. And it's funny to see things circle back. And I find like account-based selling and lead-based selling, and with hyper-personalization versus lead, like automated personalization, they come back. They go away and they come back, right? And so it is about just making sure that you're staying ahead of the game and that you're changing your techniques, because if you're doing the same thing, expecting it to work over and over again, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah. 100%. It's cyclical, isn't it? Yeah, I agree with that. So like if we ask that question in 2 years, we'll probably be talking about, people's dogs and the sport they play on the weekend again in emails.
Oh, I don't know if you remember this masterclass we had with Anthony Young, who told us the story of someone that found on his Twitter that he was a Newcastle fan and made him a video that was just the Newcastle kind of logo, and then started talking and mentioned that, and that's what got his attention. Do you think that would work today? Probably. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it probably would actually, like, especially a video of maybe with the Newcastle logo. The thumbnail of the video at least would make you click. I'm a Newcastle fan and I'd click on that. Yeah, that's like above and beyond. One of the things I'm thinking about doing at the moment, so I'm like, one of the industries I'm targeting at the moment is the restaurant industry. And I was thinking about going and filming a video in all of their restaurants, the ones like my top accounts, and sending it out to the teams there. I'll let you know how that goes.
As you said that, it's made me think. I saw an AI presentation by a company called Alan a few years ago, and they've done this thing where they put their mascot into AI generated images and settings of their choice. And that could be a really cool thing of like grabbing the logo, grabbing the mascot and kind of inputting it into different countries, different things, different settings. And you could potentially find a way to do that quite easily nowadays.
Without actually going there.
Potentially.
Maybe, yeah.
Give it a go. Let us know. Maybe do a post on LinkedIn with what you find out.
Yeah, I will.
So the next question for you is, where do you see the biggest opportunities for AI to enhance rather than replace human connection in sales?
I think this is a bit of an indirect link, and maybe this is like my own personal bias because it's just a task I hate doing. But like if AI could, particularly for SDRs, if AI could help with the list building, I know it already can, list building and research that like is aligned with our CRMs and it makes sure there's no overlap so you don't have to go and self-check it anyway. And it's kind of like doing the task twice. I think if salespeople could spend more time focusing on selling, that would be helpful. I think if they could spend more time, less time writing, more time speaking, essentially, can it automate all of the things that are not you speaking to a prospect with your actual voice? I think that's a massive gap. Like so many SDRs that I know personally, and I've seen this firsthand, that are very good at email writing, social selling and stuff, get promoted into the account executive role and they fall flat on their face because they haven't learned that like verbal spoken communication piece yet. So you just haven't done it. Like they never had to do many cold calls. That's your training ground for when you have to go into a discovery and a demo. So yeah, can it get us back to a place where salespeople are like in front of their prospects more, having to do less admin? They've got the energy to call, go out and meet people face to face, and they're not like under this mountain of tasks in HubSpot or whatever CRM you use. That's what I'd like to see. And admittedly, I'm not utilizing AI enough, so I'm probably not the best person to ask this question. But yeah, I think if we can just do more of the parts of the role that we like doing, which for me is speaking to people, that would enhance human connection because people would have more time to make the effort to go out and visit prospects and stuff like we mentioned. Yeah, kind of coming back to what you were saying, that it's going back to the old way a bit.
Yeah, no, I think, I fully agree. And one of the biggest pet peeves of most salespeople is doing admin, is doing research, is spending too much time on research, or potentially even going through these rabbit holes of like researching something that may not even be useful in your conversations or personalization, right? So there are a lot of ways for sure that AI can help us automate when used in the right ways. I think the biggest problem with AI is that some people expect it to do their job for them, and that's where the biggest problem is. And one of the things I think we're going to see is that good SDRs will use AI to help them do their work more effectively, aka save time, get rid of some of the tasks that they don't want to do or that they spend too long doing. But bad SDRs will potentially be at risk of being replaced if they're doing the same thing that AI can already do, right? So it's going to become even more important in that differentiation of what's been written by a bot and who's an actual human giving you a call and leaving you a voicemail and wanting to speak to you, who's making the effort to go to events to meet you, who's making the effort to go to your office. 100%, because people are going to remember that a lot more.
Yeah. Agreed. There seems to be a huge divide as well, I think, just amongst people generally around like AI and the use of it. Like some people seem dead set that it's absolutely going to be the future. It's going to replace our jobs. And that's a bit over dramatic, but you know what I mean? And then there's other people that seem to be, some people I think seem to feel like AI is almost like a bit of a bubble, not a bubble, but like a trend. It's a bit like crypto was a long time ago, where it was like the new thing. I don't think it is. I think AI is going to be here to stay, isn't it? And we're all going to have to adapt because, yeah, I mean, it's getting better fast, isn't it?
So my knowledge of AI has also progressed a lot in the last year as I've used it with multiple companies I'm working with, but also throughout this podcast and listening to everyone's different perspectives. And one of the things that's become very clear to me is that, first of all, AI is not new. AI has been around for many, many years and has already been utilized in many different ways, including algorithms for YouTube, Netflix, Skyscanner, all of these things that collect and gather data, even Google to a certain extent, right? To a huge extent. Then the other thing is that right now, AI has almost opened the doors to the public use, right? So it's a huge buzzword because everyone has access to it, everyone can utilize it, and we're all seeing a little bit of what it can do for us. And, I've used it in my personal life. I've used it for work. It does save a lot of time and a lot of things. And even for things that I would before ask Google, I now ask ChatGPT and I'm much more concise with a bigger prompt, with much more specific things of what I'm looking for. And that's been a huge help. But I don't think that we've yet seen what AI is capable of. I think it's going to continue evolving massively and rapidly because the advances had recently have been huge. The data is going to become potentially more accurate, and there's going to be more tools available to us to help us do things that required a lot of time before. So personally, I welcome it. I don't think it's here to overtake human or overtake our jobs, because there will be new jobs. related to AI and people that will need to manage and to create those agents and to feed them information, etc. So it is like everything in life, right? We created machines years and years ago that potentially did replace some jobs, but it also made them faster, speedier, more accurate, etc. And then other jobs were created. And so the wheel just keeps evolving as technology keeps, disrupting the world. And that's not anytime soon.
What do you think about, I don't know if you've used these. Have you seen the like AI cold call training bots? Have you tried that?
I've not tried them personally, but I've had a few demos of AI SDRs, and like they're essentially SDR agents that will do the cold outreaches for calls, for emails, for LinkedIn. What I've seen so far is a lot of a mixed bag. There are some good things. There are some really terrible things. I think the other thing is that even the AI requires a lot of human input to make it work. And because human input evolves and changes, you need to keep updating it with new information because it does require a source in order to do their job. The thing that's great about it is that if you do train it well, it can help in a lot of ways. It can gather a lot of information. It can simplify it. I really love, for example, this platform that we're using, Riverside, that automatically gives me the highlights of the conversation, some key topics. It gives me everything done. It does most of the editing, removes all of the pauses and things that are unnecessary and that you would spend hours on, and it makes my life easier. So that's kind of my take on it.
Interesting. I mean, you can see why it would be like so appealing, particularly to sales leaders, because if there's an AI agent calling for you all day, I mean, you don't have to motivate the AI, do you? Like an SDR and a human.
Yeah, but the results are very different. And I don't know if you saw Mattia Schapper did a post last week or this week where she said she did 10 human written emails and 10 AI written emails. And she got like a 70% reply rate on the human written ones and a 30% reply rate on the AI written ones, right? And so that in itself tells you, well, that's an A/B test. That's clear as day. AI will evolve and will change. But right now, I think like coaching is about so much more than just analyzing calls. If as a coach, I can get a tool that helps me analyze a call quicker so that I can coach my rep on it, then that would be amazing. But I do think that it won't be able to deal with the call reluctancy, with the emotions, the feelings of that individual. And that is a huge part of coaching because we're there as much as a coach, as a therapist, as a safe zone, as someone that they can rely on that wants them to do good and, get to that next step and someone that's got their back, but at the same time, someone that they can trust. And I think that's a huge part of coaching that AI right now can't do.
And do you think it will be able to?
I honestly don't know where the world will be in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. There is a lot of ideas and ideation of where we could be. If you look at the movie WALL-E, right? The world could be in shambles by then, and we all live in another planet in a little kind of big airplane. I truly don't know. And I think that's the scariest part about the world that we live in right now. There is a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of violence, threats, a lot of potentially world damaging things, right, that are taking place. And that's scary. And so 10 years ago, we could potentially have an idea of where we would be. I think right now, even just experiencing the blackout in Spain for like 9 hours last month, where there was no network, there was no lights, there was no electricity, if you didn't have cash, you couldn't pay anywhere because the PEDs didn't work, the pin entry devices. Like it felt apocalyptic to me, and everyone was outside enjoying themselves. But to me, I felt like, how can something, regardless of what it is, trigger multiple countries full blackout, completely isolating them? Like the supermarkets had to throw away all of their food, all of our fridges, we had to throw all away. And for days, there wasn't any replenishment of things that are quite essential, right? So it makes you think, like, if another world war exploded in 5 years' time, I don't know if I would survive it. And I know that's a bit of a pessimistic view on the world, and definitely not related to this podcast, but I think that's just what a lot of people are feeling right now, seeing what's happening in the world.
Yeah, we was meant to be meeting that day, wasn't we? And yeah, that was insane. Like, yeah, you almost do take for granted how reliant we are on tech. I don't know how we've got here from SDR coaching, but
I'm not quite sure either.
I've derailed this conversation as I do with most. Sorry.
I'm not sure either, but I think we're going to move on to the round fire, and I'm going to be asking you 3 questions on this round fire. So,
Go for it.
the first one is one book, podcast, or resource that's helped you lead with more kindness.
This is meant to be quick fire.
Mhm.
Sorry. This would probably be a bit of a different one. Does it have to be a podcast episode or just a podcast in general?
No, just a book, a podcast, or a resource, anything you want.
Theo Von's podcast called This Past Weekend. He's a comedian. It's nothing to do with professional development, personal development, sales. It's just like, I just think he's funny. But he's incredibly empathetic and just like really honest about like how he's feeling all the time, despite being one of the biggest podcasters in the world. There's just like example I'll give you. He had Mark Zuckerberg on the other day and he was trying to ask a question and he just stopped and he looked down at his lap and he went, I get really nervous. Is that okay? And he said that to Mark Zuckerberg like 20 minutes into the conversation as well. And Zuckerberg was like, yeah, of course. And I don't know why, but that moment I was just like, that is such an authentic, real thing to say. And he like, just like incredibly, like he's incredibly kind. And the response from one of the most powerful CEOs in the world. Yeah. I think that's taught me a lot, that podcast actually, about like just that people are human. Like he's had Donald Trump or like all these huge people, but he seems to manage to like break them all down back to like the human level. I love that.
I like that. I'm going to give it a listen. I don't know who he is actually. Next question is, do you have a kindness ritual that you practice daily or weekly?
A ritual?
Yeah, that can be within yourself or within work.
God, I don't think I do have a ritual for kindness in particular. I have lots of things that I do on a regular basis to like get myself into a good frame of mind. Exercise is big for me. I feel like if I'm not exercising and looking after myself, I don't bring the right version of myself to work. But I think it's almost just like just embedded in everything like that I do. Like I really try all the time because of our job to be seeing things from people's point of view, making people feel safe, whether that's on a discovery call or even on a coaching call. And I suppose, a lot of the coaching that I receive as well is around like how to do that, how to make people feel comfortable enough to tell you the truth, like going back to what we were speaking earlier. Yeah, maybe not a ritual as such, but those would probably be my things.
I definitely count exercise as a ritual. I think is one of those things that we have to make time for and we have to value in order to do it, because obviously
Yeah.
it does take time and it's part of being kind to ourselves, especially when we have a high pressure job, when we're doing a lot of different things. We need to make sure that we're looking after ourselves so that we can perform well in other areas of our life as well.
Yeah, I'm not so good at being kind to myself. I think that's something that's like being very competitive. That's something I'm learning at the moment. Actually, not through work, through golf, trying to get better at golf. People who play golf will know what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to like improve my skill and it's an incredibly difficult game. And I've been using like gratitude to help me with that. So like if I go and play and I play terribly, that could ruin my day. The type of person I am, that could ruin my whole day. And one of the things I've learned through like listening to podcasts actually about it is like I'm playing an incredibly privileged sport. It's like quite an expensive sport to get into. I'm walking around in the sun in beautiful setting and I'm allowing the fact that I'm just not having a good day to dictate how much I'm enjoying this. That's been a good learning. And I've also kind of like adopted that in work too. Like, did I learn from that call? That I don't think I did particularly well on. And as long as that the answer to that is yes, then it's like, okay, I'm okay with that then. We can go again. So yeah, really good point about being kind to yourself.
Having gratitude and expressing it and looking for it in itself is another of those rituals. I think you said it with yourself, with the golf, and I think another takeaway from that is being present, right? Like being in the setting, actually looking at what you've got around you and not looking so much for what you don't have, just looking at what you do have, right? Because even if you don't make that whole or it takes you a little bit longer, I really like this quote that Neil said, I think in his podcast episode of fail is first attempt in learning, right? And when something doesn't go right, it means you tried something and maybe the second time it will go right. Or maybe it won't, and you'll have to adjust and do something completely different. But if you don't try at all, then you probably wouldn't be playing golf in the first place.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. Somewhere along the line, your expectations of yourself like get warped and you expect more than perhaps what you should. Yeah, it's a great point.
And the last question in the round fire is, if your leadership style had a theme song, what would it be?
Theme song. I'm going to say No Easy Way Out. It's a song from the Rocky films. I can't remember who sings it. It's, yeah, No Easy Way Out.
Okay, I'll find it. We've got a playlist going on Spotify for the Kindness in Business podcast, so I'll add it to the playlist. And yeah, great song. I've got a question for you from Neil, who was our last guest in the previous episode. And he said, need to give you some context. So imagine that perhaps you're 90 years old in your deathbed and you have all of your loved ones around you, right? So it's a two-part question. First of all, what do you think you really enjoyed in that life, in those 90 years that you had? And secondly, what is the one thing that you wish you would have let go of?
What a question this is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you said it was a deep one and you said it was Neil, I expected something like proper like that. That's a great question. So what's the one thing that I enjoyed? And what's the one thing I wish I let go of?
Yeah, to be kinder to yourself specifically.
I think the one thing that I enjoyed the most is like, the word that comes to me is adventure. So like you know that I love travel. I love doing new things with family and friends, like adventure and community. Like I like being around my tribe, as it were, and doing new things. And I think like I kind of build my life around that being a big part of it. Like, am I working towards something that feels like an adventure to me, that excites me, whether that's within work, whether that's within like business, personal life, whatever it is. So adventures is the thing that I think I'll look back on and go, yeah, that was amazing. And I'm very, very privileged to have some amazing memories and like already that will carry with me all the way to that point in my life. So more of that. And then the one thing that I wish I let go of, I think I will let go of this. Like I'm working on it at the moment, but like allowing fear to like stop you, like hold you back a bit. So I'm quite a risk taker actually in most settings, but I still find that sometimes maybe I procrastinate things and I get there in the end. I will do it, but I wish I had like a bit more, like just a bit less fear. I wish I would jump more at like maybe opportunities that are not completely defined yet. That's a risk that could definitely go wrong. I hope that like I get better at that and I jump at those risks and opportunities a bit more. So yeah, if I do get to my deathbed and I still feel like that, I would be disappointed.
Well, I think, they're very good answers. And this is a quote, or not a quote, but an extract of a book that I read a few years ago. And I remember it talked about how we're driving a car and we let fear sit in the co-pilot with us at the front. And in that, we're actually allowing it to drive decisions and to take control with us because we're giving it that right. And the way we should look at fear is that fear can still come in the car, it's still allowed. It allows you to know consequences. It allows you to think about things, but it should be in the back seat behind you where you can't see it and you can't hear it and you can't give it that control. And I remember reading that and something shifted in me where I felt more empowered to make those decisions. There's that very famous quote of feel the fear and do it anyway, right? But it didn't really make sense to me until that moment, because to me it was like, well, yes, I've done things that I felt the fear, but it doesn't apply to every situation in life. And in this sense, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about being impulsive, because you're still driving, you're still in control, but you're taking all of the situations and all of the consequences and all of the ideas into account rather than just making your decision based on fear alone. And that was really powerful.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it, because that is the balance, isn't it? There's like taking a risk and then there's being reckless. Like, yeah, I love that.
I don't think many good things come without taking somewhat of a risk to begin with. And the most successful people that I know took many risks, not just the one, right? Because like we've said, sometimes you have to make mistakes, you have to fail at things to know what works, to know what you want, what you don't want. And that's part of life. And the people that stay in the same cocoon, doing the same job for 30 years, in the same life, in the same town, with the same people, don't get to experience the richness of life. And that in itself is very limiting.
Yeah.
So before we end the podcast, what question do you have for the next guest?
I heard this question somewhere else, so I can't take complete credit for it, but I do love this question, and it does tie in to probably the second part of my answer to Neil's question. So the question is, what's the one thing you're avoiding doing that you know you shouldn't be?
It's a good question. We all have things that we avoid that we know we shouldn't, whether it's going to the dentist, whether it's exercising more, whether it's looking after yourself, whether it's quitting smoking or quitting drinking, or, paying those bills, opening those envelopes, whatever it is. There's so many different things for many different people. But yeah, I think it's an important one. And at the end of the day, in order to be kind to yourself, you also need to be honest with yourself, right? Regardless of that situation, it might be tough, but it's also very anxiety inducing not to do it. The more
Yeah.
you action, the more you do it, the easier it's going to be. And the more fulfilled and like empowered you're going to feel about yourself too.
100%. Yeah. And the reason why I love that question, and again, like a relatively famous quote, is that they say that the answers you're looking for tend to be in the place you want to look least, like the place you're avoiding looking. And I think that forces you, like that question forces you into the mindset of like accepting that you are avoiding that one thing too. And I do wonder, because I do ask that question occasionally in coaching and stuff, particularly people that are like struggling perhaps with motivation or discipline or mindset. And I've always wondered, I wonder if I get the honest answer. Because when I first heard that question, there was an answer that immediately sprung to mind, and I probably wouldn't share that answer with anyone, to be quite honest. But I think just the fact that it comes up in that person's head is enough. I just love to see the moment where they kind of sit back and think. And I do wonder if anyone's ever actually told me the number one thing, or whether they've kind of like filtered it because they don't know me that well, which is completely fair enough. But yeah, it's like quite a sobering, almost like awakening question to ask someone. There's definitely like it feels like that's where some penny drop moments happen for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sometimes voicing it out loud may drive accountability that you don't want at that moment. That's why you've been avoiding it or why you've been hiding it somewhere. And oftentimes those things we're avoiding or hiding, they create somewhat of shame around, around us and how we feel, right? And I think because of that, people don't necessarily want to deal with them. But
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
has their own things that they're dealing with, and nobody's alone in that process. Life is complex and our minds are complex as well, but oftentimes what you're putting off doing, it really isn't that bad, and the moment you do it, you'll realize that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. When I first heard that question, it definitely convicted me. I was like, yeah, okay, I'm definitely putting that off, like no more. So
That's a great note to end on, and I look forward to asking that question to the next guest, which funnily enough is Andy MacDonald. So Andy.
is it really?
So I think that'll be a really good question for him. So before we end the podcast, who are two people that we should bring on to the podcast next season?
Good question. Tell me if these people are already in the lineup, or if I'd imagine they probably will be actually. I'd love to see YULife actually, like for my own personal benefit.
He's definitely someone that leads with kindness, so I'll reach out to him. He's definitely not someone that enjoys the spotlight, so that, might prevent him from doing it. But if he does agree, that makes me super happy.
That's why I said it. Because I know he'll feel uncomfortable, but I think it'd be good for him. It's hard to pick one other person. I'm going to say...
Maybe think of a lady that has impacted you on your journey, someone that's maybe a leader or,
I'm going to go with my manager now then. Her name's Naomi Winstanley Jones. Yeah, she'd be brilliant.
Perfect. I will reach out to her. Thank you so much, Torron, for coming on. It's been an absolutely amazing conversation. And I'm very happy that we got the chance to discuss some things that also we've never actually discussed, right? So it's really good. I'm really happy to see you on your journey as well, because I feel like I've seen you from almost your beginnings in sales, and you've grown so much in that time. It makes me very proud. So,
likewise.
Genuinely very happy to have had you here. I hope that everyone that's watching or listening enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next week with another episode. Have a lovely week.
Thanks.